First, again, good morning, and I want to thank co-presidents Ellen Yang and Christine McLaren for inviting me today. And can we have all the students stand up, please? Because this is your day. So if all of us in industry could look around, I think it would be great if we introduce ourselves to these folks. They spend a lot of time, and they really are our future. I'm going to tell you a quick story that's not in my notes, but last year, about 18 months ago, we did a large-scale project with one of your health system partners and colleagues down the street at Special Surgery. And in truth, the project was not going well for lots of different reasons. And so we needed a project manager or an assistant, and somehow this ad gets posted, and this student from Hunter College takes the job. And so I think she was a statistics major. And I guess she needed the money. He needed a job. She did an amazing job. She turned it around. She got us all in order. The thing was a terrific success. And at the end of it, I said to her, "Hey, student, if you ever need a job, call me." And she calls me. And so now she's in our data science academy and a top performer. And for you students, I think it's a great example of never underestimate the power to impress people when you're not even thinking about it. And again, this project was failing, and she single-handedly turned it around. And so, and we're thrilled now that she's working for our Optum business. So, let me start the day by saying it is a great time to be in healthcare. Data and technology are spurring irrevocable changes in the role of providers and the relationship and definitions of the patient. And as we at UnitedHealth develop new platforms and adopt new uses for data and technology, come on, who was going to tell me I didn't? Okay, sorry. We at UnitedHealth Group are developing new platforms and adopt new uses for data and technology. We are doing so with the understanding that if we are successful, patients will spend less time thinking about and managing their chronic condition and more time living their lives. And providers will spend less time on administrative and mundane tasks and more time operating at the top of their license. Now, if I'm successful in the next 45 minutes, here are 3 points that you will leave thinking about. 1, the only way we will advance access, delivery, and outcomes with data and technology is if we drive simplification. The current system is just too hard. There are too many speed bumps. Number 2, progress is a spectrum. Despite what the hype from developers and the investment community will tell you, we will not get as far in the next year as everyone says. On the other hand, in 5 years, we'll look back and be shocked at how far we came. And lastly, this is healthcare. It's complex. There are substantial needs. And we must remember all the talk about data and technology. At the end of the day, people still need people. So a bit about UnitedHealth Group. We serve people through 2 distinct platforms. UnitedHealth Care, which provides benefit services and coverage, and Optum, which provides information and technology-enabled health services. Our core businesses leverage 3 core competencies. 1, clinical insight, knowledge and experience in organizing healthcare resources to serve specific local market needs. 2, technology, to modernize the healthcare system, make it more connected, aligned, more consistent and productive for everyone. And data and information. We have unique skills in collecting and managing and analyzing data, and the capability to translate all this data into actionable insights. And we do so with a workforce of more than 270,000 people, approximately 30,000 physicians and nurses, about 7,000 pharmacists. We serve the healthcare needs of over 140 million people worldwide. And through UnitedHealth and Optum, in 2016, we processed about $500 billion in gross billed charges and managed about $20 billion of healthcare spend on behalf of our customers and consumers. And we're here to talk about data and technology. We process more than 750 billion digital transactions annually. Our databases include consumer data on more than 220 million people. And we invest nearly $3.2 billion on technology and innovation annually. Now, historically, this big data was fed from transactional sources, claims, electronic medical records, labs, etc. Increasingly, however, we have new data sources, one that matters the most, the patient. Small data, generated by devices, apps, wearable, data that in the past we had no access to. And this allows us to personalize, to promote preventive and protective activities, and high-touch care that's made smarter and more scalable with data and technology. Now, your conference today has a good title, Data-Driven Healthcare, Advancing Access, Delivery, and Outcomes. So I thought for the more tangible part of this presentation, I would focus on delivery. Broadly speaking, data and technology enable us to create new care delivery models that we could not have imagined executing in the past. These include virtual models, connected care, a variety of in-home and group models that we and others are developing. Now, before I jump to the specific examples, let me reassure you that with these new innovative care delivery models, before we take them to scale, we methodically, one, focus on specific patient, we study them. We focus on specific patient population. And we do so with the orientation of treating people, not conditions. So not diabetics, but people living with diabetes, the whole person. Two, we test consumer engagement models. Sure, early adopters love technology and they're thrilled by it. But what about sick populations and their providers? How will they engage with new technology? We will grab their attention if the data and technology makes their lives easier. And we must all formally evaluate the clinical and economic outcomes. New delivery models leveraging data and technology are of no use if they do not make the system higher performing. And when we, as a healthcare community, become convinced that these new models improve care, cost, and access, and frankly, it's that simple, then we must all drive adoption through payment mechanisms. Okay, so let's get with some real tangible examples of advancing models of care delivery with data and technology. Let me start with Optum's house call programs. Each and every day, 1,700 clinicians head into neighborhoods across the nation to visit with seniors. Aging Americans get personalized care where it is most important and convenient for them, in their homes. This program is a showcase for some of the most innovative technology in our industry. While maybe not sexy, the glue to this system is an information data exchange, which allows the visiting clinician to send real-time patient data directly from the home to the primary care practice. And this data set goes far beyond clinical data to include environmental and social data. And this is data in the past that physicians and their practices had no access to. The results? Physicians now have a better real-time picture about the whole patient, including their social determinants of health, so that they can address issues quicker. And two, communication processes and links between disparate healthcare teams are managed much quicker. The results? Trusting relationships, reductions in hospitalization and nursing home admissions, and increases in physician visits. When these home-based clinicians see something, they say something. Now, virtual care. Real Appeal is a consumer-friendly, evidence-based weight loss program based on the landmark diabetes prevention program. The core components, see how I kind of lighten up now? I love this program. Okay. The core components, and this is important to delineate, the core components of the evidence-based DPP, which was developed by a lot of smart investigators back in the early 2000s, are an evidence-based content about what works for weight loss, coaching based on behavioral modification principles, incentives, tracking, and social support. That's what the diabetes prevention program is and was. On so many different levels, this 10-year history is a great example of how data and technology are advancing access, delivery, and outcomes. And I hope you'll pick up in the next 5 minutes as I walk through this, the themes of simplification, the time spectrum, and that people still need people. So a little bit of history here. The Diabetes Prevention Program is a 16-session intervention. It's a lifestyle intervention, again, that originally targeted people living with prediabetes. So basically their sugars were high enough to be not normal, but not high enough to call them full-blown diabetes. And the goal was to prevent that population from converting to full-blown diabetes. The intervention resulted in a 58% reduction to conversion to diabetes. If this was a pill, we'd all be taking it. But it was a face-to-face intervention delivered by clinicians in a healthcare setting. So although the study was a tremendous success, it was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. In fact, this study was aborted about 18 months early because, as you know, they do the spot analysis, and when you have a 58% reduction in one arm, it becomes unethical to continue the study, and so they did so and they published it. So although it was a success, the intervention was inconvenient and expensive, and in short, not scalable. So a couple years later, another group of investigators translated this delivery model, remember the 5 core components, and instead of using clinicians in the expensive healthcare setting, they used community-based setting, and they trained lay coaches to deliver the intervention. And they too got similar results, and they published these results. So although this community translation went well, there were still some big issues. Number 1, payment. How are they going to get paid for this? Number 2, sites. There were still limited sites. You know, where was, by the way, at the time, 79 million Americans had prediabetes. How many sites are you going to develop to take care of those 79 million people? And engagement. Neither patients nor physicians really embraced the notion of prediabetes and what this was all about. So in 2010, we got involved, and we thought, we can fix these problems. First, we created a payment mechanism. By the way, we pay for evidence-based treatment. There was no greater evidence than the Diabetes Prevention Program. Not only was it published in the New England Journal of Medicine, there were 28 subsequent translation studies. We didn't need any more science. We actually believed that. The problem is that at this point, the service was being delivered by non-clinicians. But we can fix that, and we did. We fixed the payment. Next, we provided startup funding for the community-based providers. And so we thought, we'll make all these sites. You know where this is going, right? And we developed an online content, scheduling, and data collection system. So what happened? 4 years later, about 2014, we enrolled 10,000 people. That was more than the whole country combined. Now, who remembers how many people living with prediabetes there were at that time? The test. 79 million. Now, this is the Columbia Business School, right? So, what's 79 million minus 10,000? Yeah. You kind of see the problem. I joke, it's still 79. Did somebody say 79 million? Yeah, thank you. Right. Thank you. That's my line. So what did we miss? Not payment. We actually figured that part out. Everyone thought that was going to be the hard part. No, quote, nobody will pay for this. Turns out everybody wanted to pay for this. Everybody knew that every month, more and more people were converting to full-blown diabetes in this country. And once you have diabetes for life. And it's a big problem, both clinically and financially. So we asked ourselves, remember this is the Data and Technology Conference, could we leverage advances in communication technologies such as remote monitoring, secure messaging, and telehealth to deliver this intervention completely virtually? And the answer was yes. We, with our partners, conducted a randomized controlled trial, just like the earlier investigators for the community-based model, and we too got the exact same results. The program is now delivered live over the internet. It combines entertaining and educational videos, delivering the evidence-based content, live virtual coaching, online group participation for social support, and exercise and nutrition tracking apps. And here are the results. Now, nearly 6 million people have access to the program that helps prevent and mitigate obesity-related conditions such as prediabetes, diabetes, and cancer. And to date, there are more than 345,000 registered participants, 75% of whom have combined for a total loss of 1.2 million pounds. And 40% of these people have lost 5% or more of their body weight. And we have seen a 16% reduction in healthcare cost in year when compared to non-participants. That's a big deal. So my last example is connected care. And I'm going to end, or my final example, with a prediction. In 5 years, all doctors, will spend 50% of their time doing ground care or in-office care, and 50% of their time doing cloud care. Over the last 5 years, there have been tens of billions of dollars of investment in health-related digital technologies and wearables. And the majority of these products was and is still largely focused on healthy people in the fitness space and the wellness space. But we believe that these technologies and their data can be leveraged deeper into the healthcare space to solve some real problems. We see a specific opportunity to exploit the data, the devices, and the data they generate every single day, small, individualized data that, again, previously we had no access to enable patients and providers to better manage chronic conditions. So we decided to take a look. So this is Brian. Brian is a teenager. He's living with type 1 diabetes. He finds his quarterly visits to his physician, Laura Gandrud, time-consuming. He has to take time away from school and soccer. Embarrassing. He's often told that despite his best efforts, his A1C is still too high, and expensive for his parents. Brian wants more independence and control. In short, Brian wants to be a normal teenager. Laura Gandrud is his doctor. She's pretty unhappy at times, too. Despite the massive amounts of time she puts into tinkering with her patient's treatment plan and educating and taking their calls, she has no idea what really happens in the 8,750 hours a year that the patient is not in her office at the Children's Hospital. And yet, increasingly, she's under pressure to demonstrate value. So we asked, could we leverage the devices and the data, that the wearables that everybody's investing in now, to improve this specific care model? Might we be able to identify problems earlier and make meaningful adjustments? So we worked with Dr. Gandrud and her patients at the Children's Hospital of Minnesota to find out. In a randomized control trial, we equipped children living with type 1 diabetes with a fitness device that tracked heart rate, sleep, and activity. And we pulled this data in real time. It was Bluetooth and cellular enabled, real time, along with the data from their insulin pumps, their glucometers, and their continuous glucose monitors. And we sent all this data to a repository. And about every week, the physicians and the nurses at the clinic would review this data, which, by the way, there was a level of software laid on top to turn these bazillion data points into actionable insights. And if there was a problem with the information or the data, they actually reached out to the family or to the teenager directly and made a midterm adjustment. And in the end, the teenagers in particular especially those who were actively participating in the program, they reduced their A1C by 0.84 in 6 months, which anybody who's in that space knows that would be a great target for a new drug. And it was remarkable at one. So we needed 100 and 100 in each of the arms. How many of these parents said no thanks for the study? Anybody do clinical trials here? How many do you think said no?
A majority.
She said a majority. Zero. None. Not a single person said first it was the physician who explained what they were trying to do. And basically said to these folks, listen, we'll watch your data, and we will do a level of automated hovering, and I'll call you if I see a problem. They all said, count me in. And the only ones that we were not in were people who, for one reason or another, did not meet the criteria. And for me, that actually said that it shows you that there's an unmet need. That these are people who wake up every night, multiple times a night, scared to death all the time as parents, and now they knew somebody else was watching the data. I will tell you a funny story is that one of the parents was an engineer, and he said, wait a minute, if you're watching my data, I never have to come back here again. Right? So, kind of interesting. So, there we go. Oh, but don't, video. This is the right one. Clicker, I warned you.
The UnitedHealth group, as well as Optimus, Children's Minnesota conducted a randomized trial looking at how frequent contact between the clinical staff and families of children with type 1 diabetes could improve management.
So I went to the doctor for my 3-month checkup, and my A1C was out of whack. And they're like, hey, your A1C is in this range. Do you want to be a part of the study?
Hemoglobin A1C is a measure of what a child's blood sugar has been over the prior 3 months. It's important because it's correlated with the risk of long-term complications of diabetes.
The study, one of the requirements was checking my blood sugar 4 times a day and sending it in every week. And before then, there would be multiple days a week when I wouldn't get any blood sugar tests. And this was getting me to check my blood sugar 4 times a day.
And having it on the phone with her was wonderful. That's where it was at. She could do it herself.
The ability to see the data more frequently and make changes more frequently allowed us to have a better control of their diabetes management, particularly in the adolescents.
It brought my A1C down from something not so pretty to something that's right in the range, and it makes me very happy.
She high-fived the nurse. She's finally in range. It was very exciting.
It made me feel healthier, happier, just glad to be alive.
Pretty impressive, huh? The other interesting point to me was, in the middle of the study, we actually had to engage Geek Squad. And the reason was because despite the fact that a lot of these kids have been using these wearable technologies for a long time, now that we were getting the data in real time, we realized a lot of people weren't using it the right way. So it's like any other technology you have in your home. And so, again, we all want to jump on the hype of data and technology and say, oh, this is going to transform everything. And we forget that people still need people, and that sometimes this is really hard for people, even young people who are tech savvy. Okay, so this was a study. What will it take to offer this connected care or automated hovering at scale? We think it starts and ends with care. Connected care is about delivering the right balance of digital technologies and touch points. People living with chronic condition need more than several visits a year with their provider in a clinic setting to really understand how to manage their condition. We are learning that frequent, light touch points can deliver significant results and improve both engagement and lifestyle decisions. Remote clinical technology now enables easier self-monitoring using wearable devices and biosensors, such as continuous glucose monitor for people living with diabetes. So now, for example, if I'm wearing a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, and I have diabetes type 1 or type 2, frankly, I can tell in real time how what I eat or how activity or stress levels is directly influencing my sugar levels. And hopefully I can make my own real-time adjustments. So for example, after I eat a bowl of white rice, see how that really jumps my sugar up. And if I go for a walk, it comes down really nicely. That kind of real-time information to patients and seeing it, we believe is helping people make different decisions because they have the data in real time. So, and lastly, with all this explosion of data, cognitive computing. Artificial intelligence and machine learning we're seeing deliver insights and identify health risks and patterns that, again, we never saw before. And virtual assistants, they afford the opportunity to reach patients daily in what feels completely personalized, and yet they're virtual assistants. So today's on-demand healthcare consumer seeks convenience, options, and quality. But if we don't seamlessly integrate these experiences, we will only add to the chaos and the cost that's driving the unhappiness in the care delivery system. And lastly, we must develop new payment models. For someone like Dr. Gandrud in her clinic, if we took her from those quarterly visits, seen about, they on average get seen about 3.5 times a year, they're paid fee for service. Instead, if she saw these patients 1 or 2 times a year and then provided a level of automated hovering and data monitoring, much like air traffic control, how would we pay for that system? The good news is that we have the data to find out and to figure that out, but we must change the reimbursement system. My 5-year prediction, the first cognitive company that fuses the right touch points coupled with personalization and precision at scale will dominate the healthcare marketplace, and we are well on our way.
Big breaths.
So who wouldn't want a connected health care system? You can raise your hands if you're opposed. Right. I will tell you that we conducted a fair amount of both consumer and provider research to say, so what do you think? On the consumer side, it was 40% of people said, count me in. This is awesome. 40% of people said, I think it's a good idea, but I'm going to check with my doctor. And 20% of people said, I'm okay the way I am now. Thanks, but no thanks. On the provider side, it fell directly to whether or not they were early EMR adopters. So people who are already embracing the technology improvements in healthcare said, this is awesome. There was a small minority, though, who said, basically, I'm aging out. Count me out. I don't want any part of you. And that's actually understandable. So the one thing, though, that all the providers said, they got the concept right away. But what most people said was, you know, the war room monitoring, who's monitoring the data when it comes in? Don't send it to me. I'm already really busy, I don't have the mechanisms to accept that, etc. So what's clear, again, we must integrate this into not only the consumer's experience and the patient's experience, but the provider experience too. And we have to make it simple. So for example, a one-page summary of like, this is what happened over the last week, and you might want to consider starting an inhaled steroid. But so we really can't use this data and technology to make it harder for people. But I think over, as I said, the next 5 years, we're going to really figure this out and say, how can we actually use this to make the health system smarter for everybody? Thank you. Do the students have any questions?
We deal with a rare disease. We provide research grants and patient support to a rare disease community. My question is, with the doctors being sort of burdened by electronic medical records and resisting that, now you're going to load them up with another technology. How are you going to incentivize them to adopt?
Yeah. I think that's a really fair and good question in that, and you know, I hope you heard throughout the presentation that we cannot add to the burden and to the chaos, and you have to continually, you're going to put something in, you got to take something out. So as we are designing these things, that's exactly what you're doing. I will tell you that study with the Children's Hospital, one of the reasons it was such a success on every level was because they were completely engaged into this. You know, so culture eats strategy for lunch every day. We can have all the best strategy in the world, and if there's the practice and the community does not want the change, it is not going to happen. But these folks understood, and they had some hiccups. You know, they had some moments where they had to hire an extra nurse practitioner to make sure that data per the IRB was reviewed weekly. So I'm not saying it's easier, but it is, now I'll tell you, it was such a success that they are converting their adolescent clinic into a connected care for a lot more cloud care. And overwhelmingly, all the families, you know, said, we want this kind of care in the future. And the nice thing is they really did see themselves as citizen scientists. They said, we know this is not going to be smooth all the time. This is the beginning. This is hard, but count us in. Any students? Alum. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Matthew Price, class of 2009. My question is, how can you see this translating into cost versus outcome? So the U.S. has essentially the worst cost versus outcome ratio, at least in the developed world, if not as a whole, in terms of macroeconomic public health outcomes. So can this translate beyond the bottom line of an insurer into outcomes in the country?
So I'm blanking right now. There's a book, a good book that's out that talks about, somebody maybe knows it and can jump up here, talks about how other countries spend much more, less in healthcare, but much more in social care of different sorts. So one of to me, the exciting features of both this presentation and just the work in general and where data and technology is taking us is, for example, in our house call programs where, you know, we are faced in real time with the aging Americans and their social determinants of health. And it's funny, I think when a lot of us hear that, we immediately, you know, at one point think about poor people, and we all have social determinants of health, no matter who we are. So, and you know, if I have a 2-hour commute to work every day, that's going to negatively impact my life. So I'm seeing that as we learn more and more about what real people are living in health, their social factors are directly affecting their healthcare cost. We're actually seeing meaningful interventions, and so we've developed, for example, a number of programs around that aspect. But it's a big deal, but now that you're actually tracking and can see the data, until you actually have that kind of information, you certainly aren't going to develop any solutions. But that's a great question. Thanks, Alum. Another alumni.
I have a question about this data-driven technology and then mixing up with clinical data as well as technology. There's this question of patient confidentiality as well as using that data for research purposes. So I mean, I work for a hospital too. So I kind of come across these two different things, and then how do you manage that now that you're collecting so much data, there's so much patient information is there, I mean, it could fall into the wrong hands
Yeah.
and things like that. So how do you protect, prevent,
Yeah.
and safeguard this type of data in your
Yeah. That's critical. I mean, that is, data safety and security is, I think I told you about the 270,000 employees. Well, there are tens of thousands of people dedicated really to just technical and data security because it is such a critical issue. I think as it relates to, it is the patient's data and they have the right to share it with whom they want. So even in our study, they have to consent to say, yes, I am going to give, and specifically what kind of data and for what purposes and whether or not you can use it for research. But you're right, it's the patient's data. Interestingly, most people, when they see value in what you're going to do with it, they say, yeah, count me in. But clearly you can see from the video, they have a high degree of trust with Laura Gandrud, and certainly people know that we take data security as a top priority, and you simply, that's the cost of doing business. You must put in all the safeguards and get all the permissions, and use it responsibly. Oh, I already picked somebody. Oh, you want to go first? All right, you go first. No.
Go first, it's okay.
All right, flip a coin.
I've got the mic, I'll go ahead. First,
Thanks.
thank you for a great presentation and for indulging me while I type with my fingers to take notes. My question is about the reference to the Geek Squad that you mentioned and whether or not outside of the clinical trial setting that becomes a part of the fabric to maintain and to sustain the access to fixing what people don't even know that is broken in the use of their wearables and so forth.
So you know how you learn things in life, and so you learn like, oh well, I'm smart, I'm clinical, everything. So much of it's not about the clinical. It is about the things such as, my mother can't figure out how to turn the computer on. It's not that she can't type. It's not that she's just not smart. It's that, or she gets one little message and she doesn't know what to do. And so I do think as we all become more data and technology enabled, that we're going to have to figure out the service part of that. And this is where people still need people. It's hard. And
Has that O-bar, Ochsner, the Ochsner hospital system has an O-bar. It's kind of like a Genius bar. In the hospital,
right.
Where they give patients an iPad to help them to stay connected.
Yep.
I don't know if that infrastructure is starting to take shape.
Well, even that whole idea of a genius bar. So at UnitedHealth Group in our businesses, we have genius bars now. Optum has them all over, and it really, even just making it easier versus, remember the old days we called the help desk. You wondered who those people were. Now we can actually just walk up at lunch or whatever, and there are staff there to help you and actually solve your problem. So we must, just like we're going back into the homes and actually delivering care and becoming smarter because of it. I think we must have the service element.
And this is kind of a second question. Is the medical school education curriculum keeping up with?
Yeah, I don't know. Is anybody here from the medical school? Please, would you answer? Better her than me.
So hi, I'm Remy Kessler. I'm a medical student from Mount Sinai, and I'm here trying to pursue an MD MBA path. To answer your question, no, at least at Mount Sinai. I can't speak for Columbia, but it's very much a traditional medical education with 2 years preclinical in the classroom, learning old-style physical exam, traditional medicine. We don't really involve iPads or computers. So the answer is no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a little
I'm sorry.
different take on it.
Sorry. I told her.
Oh, sorry.
She's been so patient. You're next.
So it sounds like you have a lot of great pilots. I'm just curious what time horizon you're using to assess whether they're successful or not.
Scale. You talking about scaling or
No,
the pilots
from a
themselves?
business perspective,
Yeah.
how long do you give a pilot before you determine that it's a success or a failure?
See these gray here? That's why. So I want to go back to this slide. Let's see. Does it go backwards? Will you put that keep going. Yeah, thank you. So this is a really good example and of what it really takes. And you're going to hear a lot of hype from the entrepreneur community. Everything's 1 to 2 years, 2 to 4, It's simply not true. It's simply not true. Real scaling in healthcare takes time, So this really was an 8-year journey. And And I would say that, sure, we had successes along the way, and we kept building both. We were sort of in an agile form, developing for what we needed and then learning and going to the next step. So the technology that we're now using to deliver this program to millions of people is not the technology we used in the beginning, but that's how, back in the 80s and 90s, for those of you who weren't there, we used to build to scale right away. We don't do that anymore. We do, but we do study everything, and we register our studies and we publish the outcomes, because it's really imperative that if you eventually want reimbursement for your service or device or whatever it is, you must have documented clinical and financial outcomes in the published literature. Now, we rarely see the financial, but we will run through our health economics group all the modeling, et cetera. But that's usually retrospective, and in this work, we stay disciplined, for example, to run the economics and the clinical work prospectively. And then once you get that here's the good news, that takes time. But once you get that level of data and information, it's an easy sell to make. I think you were going to go next.
I did not have a question. I was asking.
Oh.
Medical school.
Oh, please. Thank you.
I think we're somewhat misunderstanding what medical schools are trying to do. I have seen the Geisinger Health System start its medical school and basically looking at the pipeline of what the future of physicians will be. So they are catering immensely to value-driven medicine being delivered, to the extent that sometimes I worry, is the clinical medicine in the old style taking a back step? So I really think the medical schools are understanding. They're already in line with what the future of healthcare delivery is. Technology is being leveraged by institutions that have understood what the future of medical care delivery is, and essentially creating a pipeline by creating medical schools that would go aligned with that strategy for future.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, too. Today's students are different. I mean, I can see that because my children are the same age as these medical students, and that they're going into medical school or into law school or into public health school with tremendous data and technology capabilities. It's kind of just what they do. So part of our question sometimes, it's an aging. I think, I hope they're teaching that. Well, they don't need to teach it. These kids already know it in a way I need to be taught. People, and versus, some of these 23-year-olds, they were math majors and then they have PhDs in this, and now they're going to medical school. So it really is fascinating who it's attracting. Anybody a student? Okay.
It ties back. Hi, this is Yoni. I'm in the executive program at Columbia. It ties back a little bit more to the question of the security, but more from a physician perspective. What is the reaction from the data submitted from devices from the physician versus the ones kept out?
Yeah. So now it's kind of like this, but you can, and I'll give you an example. So historically, who can tell me what an EKG output looks like? Just draw it with your finger in the air. Right. We've all seen it on TV, right? And so, and the reason you know that is because it's a standardized output. So no matter who makes the machine, the output's the same. So interestingly, like for example, for a long time, continuous glucose monitors, the output's not the same. And so talk about adding to the chaos of the system. So, and you all have, and glucometers, I meant glucometers. So it's really hard for me to get that download and make sense of it. I think the good news is that you're seeing, the industry respond to both providers and patients. And now, for example, there's something called the ambulatory glucose profile, which takes all that and puts it into a one-page beautiful graph with, showing trends. I could show it here. I wish I had it, and I would. And you'd say, oh, look, he has a problem every night at 7 o'clock. What do you do after work? And you say, well, I drink beer. I say, okay. Then as the doctor, I can say, I have two choices. I can tell you, take your medication later in the day or stop drinking beer. But that kind of real information presented simply, both to the patients and to the providers, is the only way this will work. Any more students?
Hi, Georgette Zaddalos from EMBA class of 2018, graduating this year.
Hey.
Okay, so my question is with relationship to how the U.S. compares with Europe and Asia with the data-driven technology. Has the U.S. been faster, or has it been the opposite way? I don't know if you can shed any light on that.
Yeah, I can't actually. I will assure you it's different. So we have different regulatory pathways, we have different payment pathways, we have, and you know, even the way physicians and everybody are reimbursed. So, you know, for good or for bad, all that I think takes into consideration, you know, as different countries adopt different things.
I was just wondering, I guess, if the U.S. bases anything on Europe, because Europe has been known to pursue medical devices and pharma a little bit faster than the U.S. So if any of this data-driven technology has been based off of Europe and also Asia.
I will tell you that I visited a clinic in the Netherlands called Diabetes, and they actually manage at full risk most of the type 1 people living with type 1 diabetes in that country, and it was fascinating. It's a great business case study, you know, about how they use a increasingly more cloud care than ground care, how they're driving towards terrific outcomes. And interestingly enough, and I thought this was something I had not thought about, so because everybody's using the connected devices and they're all connected and they're all watching, they have a whole, it looks like the air traffic control, they have a whole bay of folks dedicated to watching the data. They also can do supply chain management from that, because they can tell how many people are using their supplies, how much insulin they're dosing, and so in real time they can actually send the supplies out. So something I had not considered, but just a terrific opportunity for us to think about.
Thank you.
Okay, I think it was your turn, and then you.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Thank you. My name is Mark, and I'm the class of 2019. So you discussed the diabetes program, and you discussed the 16% savings.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate more on that? Is that medical or pharmacy savings? And how do you reconcile the costs now and the savings later?
Yeah. So the 58% was a reduction in conversion to full-blown diabetes. The program itself had a 16% total cost of care. And really, these days, it has to be total cost of care. You have to take all in. As it relates to forward projections, with something with diabetes as an example, diabetes, again, once you have diabetes, you have it for life. And we can actually track the cost of care for people living with diabetes, you know, over the past 20 years and going forward. And really it becomes about risk mitigation, you know. And so the good news here that as you are able to better manage your condition at home with the advances in data and technology, you will get less and less complications, et cetera. So, and again, you know, what I showed you was sort of the highest level. So for example, though, we know a third of costs for people living with diabetes actually are often lower leg, serious lower leg issues, lower limb issues. And, you know, so there's now technology out there that you can do heat sensing for feet. For people, remember, people when you have diabetes, you often can't feel your feet, so you don't even know that you're getting an ulcer or something, and that drives a tremendous amount of morbidity and cost. But if we could, in real time, monitor that and then have a warning detection system back to the patient, say, hey, it might be good for you all to come in because I'd like to check out your feet. I mean, that sounds silly, but if you don't know you're heading to trouble, if we can do, again, as I said, prevention or proactive risk mitigation, it works for everybody. And when you have diabetic foot ulcers, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. Thanks for being patient.
Sure, of course. Tom Reckshoff, and I'm from a college class of 100 years ago.
Okay.
I wanted to just defend the old
I was in your
doctors.
class.
Exactly. I think a lot. If you let me call this telehealth for a second. A lot of the telehealth technologies actually are developed by practicing physicians trying to solve these problems.
Yeah.
And some of them are very old and gray haired too. And I'm with the American Urological Association. And lots of our physicians have developed a lot of telehealth with regards to diagnosis and even remote surgery. And they've worked very well in closed healthcare systems like Kaiser. But any doctor who has to actually bill someone, a payer, for that service, there's really very little opportunity to get reimbursed for telehealth services.
Yep.
Medicare won't recognize anything but face-to-face. It doesn't quite include FaceTime yet. And most payers in New York State do not have any easy way of billing for telehealth services. So the issue is not necessarily the doctors not wanting to adopt this. They love it. It's our ability to get reimbursed.
Yeah. I think, do you agree that you feel like the times are beginning to change?
They are.
Yeah.
I mean, we're pushing a lot of legislation in that way too in Washington.
Yeah.
So Medicare will cover these
Yeah.
services, and once they do, it'll just mushroom.
Right. So I agree. There have been some regulations. I think it was originally physician to physician for telehealth. How about physician to patient? I think the good news is with it, we really are at a tipping point, and with advancing all these technology and some of the changes that the FDA, et cetera, they're making. The regulations. I mean, I give them government a ton of credit. They really are beginning to focus and move this rather quickly. So I think stay tuned. Thank you. One more question. All right.
Okay, thank you. Nick Reesum, class of 95, and I'm on the board of Stanford Hospital. And my question to you is, which hasn't come up yet, but the future and your outlook that you see with something like Amazon, Berkshire Hathaway, and JP Morgan, and how you think that's going to impact the industry.
It's hard for me to comment. They're three terrific companies, and certainly their leaders are terrific. There are very few specifics, so it's hard to comment when there's no specifics. Healthcare is hard, it's complex, and there are a lot of needs. And so we remain committed to focusing on these major, whether it's chronic care, transparency, but I don't know because there were very, very few specifics. Okay, thank you. I'll be outside. Thanks.